So there's been a few different pieces of Metroid Prime 4 information floating around online recently, and this is a game that is of course shrouded in mystery. More than just about any other Nintendo Switch game of the entire generation, we of course originally got confirmation that Metroid Prime 4 would be headed to the Switch back in 2017. Development is then restarted in 2019, and it's essentially been radio silent since then. Yes, we do know that Nintendo is planning big things in the marketing buildup to Metroid Prime 4 because obviously we already have one of the big first pushes for that, which is none other than Metroid Prime Remastered, that has sold very well, is a fan favorite game, and it's arguably one of the best looking games on the Nintendo Switch today, period. And there's also no reason to discount the idea that we may see yet another Metroid game unveiled at the next September Nintendo Direct that we will likely be able to expect to take place. And the rumored game in question is none other than Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. And of course, if you do 1 and 2, you're not going to leave 3 out of the mix, so at some point in the future, we should hear about Prime 3 Corruption. But these are all obviously different puzzle pieces that Nintendo is putting into place to ultimately come together with their bigger plan, which is to have an extremely incredible launch for Metroid Prime 4 once we finally get that big reveal trailer that shows us gameplay, a glimpse of the world. And while there's some debate on whether or not this will be a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive or still launch on the current Switch that Nintendo said it would, that is the first piece of information that we are going to be tackling, and we will also be discussing some very interesting, potentially leaked information, suggesting just how big the scope of this project might be, in addition to the visual fidelity that we may be able to expect. But to first briefly talk about whether or not Metroid Prime 4 may launch on the Nintendo Switch at all, we do have some information from Andy Robinson on a recent podcast that will be linked in the description down below under the sources section, where during a certain timestamp in the podcast, he is discussing what he has heard recently on Metroid Prime 4. He does go out of his way to say that this is only one source and maybe doesn't feel as confident writing up an entire article around this because he can't verify it from multiple sources, but somebody who he has been in contact with has essentially more or less told him that they have heard that Metroid Prime 4 will be the last major game for the Nintendo Switch. Now you may want to stop me right there and say, hang on, wasn't that what we were hearing with Tears of the Kingdom and from names like Andy Robinson out there before? And the actual wording with that was that Tears of the Kingdom would potentially be the last heavy hitter for the Nintendo Switch, but a lot of people forgot that Andy Robinson went back on those words later on, and it wasn't just him. There were numerous other reporters in the gaming industry essentially going out on a limb and stating that Tears of the Kingdom was the big final quote-unquote blockbuster release or big Nintendo Switch game, if you will. And depending on how you define a big Nintendo Switch game or heavy hitter, if you will, that might actually still be true. I mean, yes, we have games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which will obviously sell big numbers, but it's also probably going to sell over the course of a few years. The Mario games tend to be, especially the 2D ones, tend to be a casual pickup, and they are evergreen titles that will continue to sell over the lifespan of a console, and there's no reason to think that we might not see it continue to sell on Nintendo's next generation console, assuming we are to expect backwards compatibility. And while I'm someone who is a lifelong Metroid fan and absolutely am in love with the franchise, I myself would not classify it as one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, because while it is a game that Nintendo has come back to in recent years and shown more love and support for than we've seen almost ever in franchise history in the current Nintendo Switch generation we are in, I still think that it is a franchise that Nintendo knows has potential to go to the next level and potentially appeal to a wider mainstream audience one day, but does not do that today. And I think that that is why we are seeing all of these different marketing pieces come into play for Metroid Prime 4, and it would stand to reason that Nintendo may want to keep to their promise of having Metroid Prime 4 launch on the current Nintendo Switch that we have now, since it was originally revealed for this console, and clearly Nintendo thought this game would be out a lot sooner than it actually will see its ultimate retail street date launch. But then you do have to ask the question on whether or not this may be a cross-generational launch and may come out at the same time as the new Nintendo Switch piece of hardware that we know to expect likely in 2024. And that's where things get a little bit more dicey, because we then have some other information claiming that this Metroid Prime 4 project is a true visual showpiece and something that is quote unquote visually unbelievable, as well as it being not open world, but just a step back from that entire scope. And that's where we have to go over the part 2 of the new Metroid Prime 4 updates, news, and information, where you can see the following article posted up over on My Nintendo News, which reads, Metroid Prime 4 reportedly contains massive areas to explore, though not open world. Details on the long-awaited Metroid Prime 4 are certainly hard to come by, as everyone at Retro Studios and Nintendo remain tight-lipped about the project. However, Xbox Era co-founder Nick Baker recently spoke about the game on the Xbox podcast after reportedly learning new information from his sources. Baker says that the game is set to feature massive open areas to explore, which he likened to the Xbox game Halo Infinite, though the game itself won't be an open world adventure. This makes sense, as the tech has moved on a lot since the days of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption on the Wii. Baker also says the visuals and environments in Metroid Prime 4 reportedly look unbelievable. The exact quote reads, in addition to the game looking visually unbelievable, said source also claims that Metroid Prime 4 will feature big, massive areas. Baker says that though he doesn't believe the game is going to be open world, it will have significantly larger areas than previous titles in the series. According to Baker, the person seeing the game in action apparently said that the size of the environments reminded them of Halo Infinite's big and open environments, though Halo Infinite really was open world, of course. So the prospect of a semi-open world or open zone Metroid Prime game does seem enticing to me, and I definitely think, as somebody who really ranks Prime 1 Remastered and the entire Prime series on kind of a different level, it is a different type of enjoyment than I get from 2D Metroid games. I will say that, because I thoroughly enjoy all of Metroid 1 through 5, and love to boot them up at any given time to this day, but Prime 1 specifically sticks out in probably my top 5 favorite games of all time, period, which is really saying something. And Prime 2 and 3 are very quality and enjoyable titles for me as well, and if they just expand on those core ideas that they had in the previous Prime games, but take it to the next level with the open world / open zone exploration, just have massive environments that aren't quite as closed off as we've seen in Prime 1 through 3, I think that that bodes well for the future of the franchise. And I think that with open world games becoming as prevalent as they are in the modern gaming era, it just makes sense for Metroid Prime to come close to that type of environment, structure, and setup itself. It also stands to reason that because you have to continue to unlock different abilities and power-ups to progress through certain areas of the Metroid map, that open zone might be the right word, because you may still have sections that are entirely locked off on the map and you're not able to go to them, but just getting through the areas where you might find your different power beams and might find screw attack jumps, super missiles, super bombs, and you name it, all of Samus's iconic abilities that she typically gets upgraded throughout any given playthrough. They very well could be locking off certain entire large sections of the map, and this might be a open zone type of game, similar to what you'd see in something like Pokemon Legends Arceus, where it's not entirely seamless. If you want to go towards some of the map sections that are towards the end of the game, you just can't get there until you do certain things in the beginning maps, and Metroid Prime 4 may unlock like that. But if it's all linked together in a seamless, woven open world experience with incredible visuals throughout the entire time, I think that that sounds like a very exciting prospect for the future of Metroid Prime. And I personally do believe that while this can absolutely be pulled off on the current Nintendo Switch, there is also a lot of reason to think that it being visually unbelievable may also be indeed referencing the fact that we may be seeing either just the best looking Nintendo Switch game or a cross-gen title that looks that much better on potentially something that is being built for new Nintendo hardware. But the jury remains out on all of this stuff. I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, how you think we will see Metroid Prime 4 launch. Do you think that it will indeed be this type of cross-generational game where we still get it on the Switch and it's the last big Nintendo Switch game, period? Or do you think it is something that may be reserved entirely for the Nintendo Switch 2 and it actually skips the Switch altogether? Also, are you expecting to hear information about this game anytime soon at things like a potential upcoming Nintendo Direct in September? Or do you think it may be something that's a longer play from Nintendo and we won't hear anything about Metroid Prime 4 until after Prime 2 and 3 are officially revealed and dropped and are playable on the Nintendo Switch? And lastly, let me know how you feel about the idea of a semi-open world style Metroid Prime game. Are you excited by that, or do you think that it should resemble Prime 1 through 3 and the size and scope of the environment should also resemble those games? Or are you more ready for a shakeup of the entire formula as a whole? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before we leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.